All right, we're live.
It is 6:31, and with us this evening is Patrick Knight, Michael Roth, Craig Schulte, Aaron Carlson, Ben Peters, myself, and I think the rest we'll let all of our guests introduce themselves at the appropriate time. Yes, I'm sorry.
And Kim.
And Kim, sorry. Distracted by all of our wonderful guests this evening. And we have our city attorney, Chris Hood, on as well this evening. Is there anyone here for open forum, or are we all guests with an intended purpose? So, all right. With that, then, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We didn't have any additions to that this evening, right? What did I see sitting here? Was this?
There's an additional bill that's included in the bills to be paid.
Okay. Do we need to formally add that then?
As long as you all see that it's added, we'll just include it in the bills.
Very good. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions, bills, minutes, anything? Okay. All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We are all set. We'll move on from that to the big topic of the evening, the City Hall and Liquor Store. And now, if all of our guests would like to introduce themselves before we begin.
Brandy Leon, architect with LHB.
Mike Fisher, architect with LHB.
Brian Durand, project executive, McGough Construction.
Eric Johnson with McGough, project manager.
Thank you.
Doug Zahn, on-screen architect with LHB.
And John Bennick, on-screen with estimating for McGough Construction.
Welcome.
Thank you. Do we have a quiz now? So we have to like go back and make sure we remembered all of your names.
We will quiz somewhere in the middle of the presentation. So can I share my screen? Is that I present? All right. All right. So as noted, this is the it's a 65% or a DD review of the City Hall and Liquor Store project. Short little agenda, we're going to go over the building and site design, current status of that. McGough will cover the cost estimate and some alternates we've looked at, and then Mike Fisher will take a look at explain some of the alternative energy credits that are also available with the project. So we'll get started with building site and plans. I think there was a little packet that went out on Friday. Some of these drawings are going to be different. They're going to be more the construction drawings. I think what was sent on Friday was kind of a more simplified version, just a cleaned up version, a little easier to read. But these are the actual drawings in their preliminary phase, like I said, about 65%. So for the site plan, some of the highlights to hit, we had the survey done. The site, while it appears relatively flat, it drops a little over 2 feet from one end to the other. So the high point is up in this corner at 608, and then the low point is out at the driveway at 606. And so it took a little effort to site the building on the lot, because we know this one's low. We don't want to be low. So we've set the finished floor elevation at 608.5 to make sure that we're above everywhere we need to be. And then getting this back parking lot to drain at the 606 is kind of where we had to site the building. So that pushed the building elevation up, pushed the building away from, we had to push it back then to be able to get into the building is really what it comes down to. So we end up with stairs and ramps into the entries at both the liquor store and at the City Hall elevation. Because like I said, it's about a 2-foot difference as it goes around the building. Some other things, move from grading into just site layout. Blue line is the building footprint. We've got 27 parking spots in the parking lot with 2 handicap spaces. We've got, we've dedicated a space for snow storage along the south end of the property. So for plowing, we left space there to be able to just plow it off and get your big piles and not really lose any parking spaces. There's an equipment pad in the corner that'll have the transformer, another terminal cabinet and some mechanical stuff, plus the dumpster and recycle bins. We've got a small little paver patio here that's gonna have a picnic table, some bike racks, and we're gonna reuse the bike repair station that's out here now, kind of get that out there for people to use. And then, like I said, it's a paver there, so it's got a little permeable surface there. We are, because the parking kind of goes right up to the building, and we didn't want to introduce curbs because of the way the grading goes, that pushes the building up again. We're recommending putting in just some boulders to stop cars from hitting your building. They're nicer looking than bollards. So that's kind of, I guess you have it on the back and the alley side, so we
Yeah.
reuse those if we can and get some new ones. I'm sure there's plenty around.
Those look bigger than the ones you have in your drawing.
They might be.
Those are more about stopping trucks. than cars.
Right, right. This is just to stop the ones, you just don't want them rolling into the building. And then the other thing, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on here, is so as noted, so we've got ramps for the City Hall side. It'll come from the parking lot, ramp up, and then we've got steps, and they're pretty wide, about 12 foot wide, kind of a big staircase. So, and then because we have to push back from the sidewalk so far, we're proposing it's a flagstone. I call it mulch, but they're big, like 2 foot, 3 foot flagstones, kind of stacked. Kind of looks like some of the stone ridges around and stuff, so that's kind of what we're proposing there. And I know you said you didn't want any plantings, but we kind of feel we have to have some plantings in front of the building, so we've just got some ornamental grasses. Low maintenance, no maintenance. So any
We're trying to
questions?
avoid having a lawnmower.
Right,
So
no
we don't have to
lawn.
build a room for a lawnmower.
Right. Any questions on site plan?
Where are the electric chargers?
They'll get reinstalled back in this corner
Right there. Oh,
where they
same-
were.
kind of
Yeah,
same
they have to
place.
move
Mhm.
because of the parking lot, but we'll still keep them back in this corner unless you want them in a different, you want them up closer. Because we're moving them, there's some flexibility there too. If there's a better spot, but I think the corner is probably,
I think it works really well.
yeah. So any other questions? We did add a tree into your grate out here that doesn't have a tree.
It also doesn't have a grate anymore.
Oh, well then we
So-
won't put that one in there.
Yeah. We did a little concrete work a couple weeks ago.
Okay,
Can't keep up with you.
I know.
65%.
Right.
Thought we didn't want that curb.
Which, sorry, what was that?
You have concrete curb ribbon,
At the back?
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, is that gonna be a flat curb just to?
It's a flat
move-
curb,
Just to
it's-
move water?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's flat.
because there's
Yeah,
gonna be a lot
it's-
of people driving over that.
Yeah, it's a drivable. It's just that little one to
Yep.
keep them somewhat separated, so. All right, just to show you this structural system, concrete foundations, steel columns and beams, steel roof joists. We've done in what we can to kind of simplify it to help with some of the costs on the structural. I can't answer a lot of questions about structural, but if you have questions, we can relay them. So floor plan, this is the architectural floor plan. It gets hard to read, I know, and we could go to the furniture plan if that works better, but we'll just kind of, very little has changed on the plan from what you guys have seen before. It's more just, fine tuning and making sure all the dimensions are working out. So you know, the public bathrooms, we made sure we're meeting all the ADA clearances, everything's been in there, same with the family toilet room and the janitor's closet. Only changes that we had in this open office was we did add a small little roof access. So to get up on your roof, there's a roof hatch, and then there's a little ladder to get up there, so you don't have to go throw ladders up on the exterior of the building, and keeps it all internal.
It's always kind of fun to use that exterior ladder thing, though.
I'm sure your staff loves that.
They don't seem to mind, but I like this idea.
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yep. The other change, so in the council chambers, what we're showing here, we've put in some bifold doors, because there was discussion about having that be able to be open, so that if you had a bigger meeting, you could use this lobby space as overflow. I think there's some discussion to be had about those, if that's really the right thing, if you want to, spend the money on those, because those are not cheap doors. If it's just still have the glass and then just have people able to be on the lobby side with video and audio up there, like they can still see and hear, but they don't have to be, the doors don't have to be open. It's kind of the one thought we had there, is maybe we want to go that way. Other floor plan change is that we had to add a separate IT closet separate from the electrical room. So we have an electrical room where the service comes in, and then there's this IT closet for all your computers and fire alarm and probably some AV stuff. I think is probably going to end up in there too. So what that did is it took space out of this back point, and I did take out that third janitor's closet. So we have a janitor's closet here in the liquor store, and then the one up in the front by the public bathroom, and no longer have that third one. We just ran out of room to get everything in there, so. And then the liquor store we've had a meeting or two with Chris, with the manager over there, to make sure that the layout is working for them. We deleted some shelves because they're just gonna stack some stuff, and then talked about what the point of sales will look like.
Speaking of which, where is Chris?
That's a good question.
And like I said, the cleaned up furniture plan is a little easier to kind of tell with room sizes and stuff. Any questions on floor plan?
Do you have a cost breakdown on what those bifolds cost, rather than just making that a glass wall?
John,
We're gonna get
John,
to
we
that.
did look at that. Do you have that available?
Yes, we do have the overall price of those bifold doors. We don't have any sort of price worked up together. If we were to switch to a different style, maybe like Brandy's talking about, if it's just a typical store for front, but those bifold doors are probably about $48,000 for the three of them.
Just do a quick roof plan, just more to show that we've got this roof access hatch in the middle, and then we're kind of showing some shaded areas as areas of the building that are sized for photovoltaics on the roof. And then what we did over the admin area was show kind of a green roof area. These are add alternates as in the estimate, but the structure is sized for this, so even if it doesn't happen now with the building, it can be added later. It'll be set up for it. And the civil engineers really want the green roof because there's very little permeable surfaces on this lot now. So you have the building and the parking lot, and it's trying to slow down the rainwater if we can. So
We just did some public meetings talking about the co-op pond, and the engineers we're working with there also liked the idea. They would like the whole thing to be a green roof, and for the same reason, because this is the drainage area that feeds the pond and the parking lot across the street. So the more we do to reduce our runoff, the less we have to deal with over there.
right.
So Brandy, is there any reason, like, if the city decided to go that way, could we do green roof on the entire thing? No photovoltaics?
Probably. I think it's a very comparable
Okay.
site. I mean, I would verify that with the engineer, but yeah.
Is there a life difference, like on the, like, how long, like a green roof? I know nothing about those systems, so like, are they 20 years, are they 30 years? Or are they, how much maintenance and cost is there?
What's the annual maintenance to maintain something like that versus, you know, standard?
Yeah, I don't have the answers off the top of my head for that. The system I was looking at here is a tray system, and so, you know, it comes in these little trays, and you can plunk them out, and then you can replace them as needed too. It's not the, like, full depth green roofs that you see on some of those. And the trays probably do have a shorter lifespan.
So there's some redundancy, because you still have a roof underneath.
You still have a roof underneath, yeah. Yeah, these are, and that's why we like this tray system, is because it's not, your roof's not not that it's dependent on it anyway, but if it's built in the full depth system, it's harder to kind of take that off if your green roof is just not working for you, you know?
So is that just grass in the green roof?
It's, they select the plantings based on your location, so it would be, you know, sedums and low-growing stuff that just doesn't need much maintenance. I mean, there is maintenance, but it's not, you don't have to be up there weeding it, you know, weekly or having to cut anything or.
Which I think is different than when you do a green roof that's meant to be, you know, people are up there having drinks or spending time. That's a whole different animal for maintenance, and this is not about the aesthetics, it's just the performance.
Right.
So I think it's just, yeah, making sure that if you're in a drought, that someone's up there keeping it alive.
Right, and that's,
right?
the mechanical they put a, you know, a hose bib up on the roof for this purpose, or it's set up, the system is set up to have the hose bib in there if you do put in the green roof, so that in times of drought, you can go up and water your roof.
Well, that's the other question that engineers working on that pond asked is, if we got any use for gray water? And we didn't, but
Right.
we would.
That would be a good use for it.
So we might need to put a tank in too.
Just to keep going through this quickly, is just a ceiling plan, basic 2x2 acoustic tiles in majority of the office spaces, chipboard ceilings in the bathrooms. In the council chambers, we did kind of upgrade the acoustic tiles a little better, so we've got some softening along the edges with the chipboard and some integrated lights. Then we went to like a larger format acoustic tile with integrated lights, would be these little linear lights in the grid. So it just looks a little nicer and doesn't cost that much more. And then in the liquor store, it's just going to be exposed, painted structure, hanging lights, and then we've got, you know, some little softening, and we'll kind of in the next phase work out any additional things they need there. And then, you know, some we threw in kind of some specialty lights up in the front where there'd be some displays. And then looking at the elevations, what we've done to kind of, they're one building, but they're two separate functions, and we kind of want them to look like different things as we've talked throughout our whole design. So what we've done is we've put a cast stone base to about 4 foot above floor, and we've wrapped that around the whole building. So that'll help with snow and just protect the building a little bit more to have that along, and then makes it all consistent. On the City Hall side, we're proposing brick above that on the east side and the south side of the building. On the back of the parking lot side, we do change that to a different material. And then we're proposing kind of a wood kind of feature that would have the signage on it. And then same with under this, with these, have the same wood tones underneath this canopy. And then on the liquor store side, we would switch to a metal panel And then also ribbon windows over there that are up higher, so the bottom of it's like 5'8" or 6 feet even. So they can still display stuff below it, but you get the light coming in. And then there's also, we're providing power if they want to plug in any signs to have in the windows. But we look at this metal panel being kind of a more neutral color, and then on the corners, proposing to switch over to a kind of a fiber cement panel, kind of a heavy fiber cement, and we would do a color on those two. Storefront windows, and then the doors at the liquor store are the automatic bi-parting. And then same thing on the north side of the building. We've got the one color block in one corner, and then we would repeat that on the other corner. And those are spaces for big signage panels, lit signs, and then same with the big ribbon window to have display and get light in there. And then at the back parking lot side, like I said, it's just a little more utilitarian. It's just metal panel above the cast iron. Small canopy over the staff door, so you don't get rained on. And then just threw in some 3D images because that's sometimes a little easier to see. But there you can also see the ramps and the stairs too.
So Brandy, that under the canopy for City Hall, that's really like a porch now, because it's elevated a couple feet.
It's elevated a couple feet, and it's the good thing. I have to verify that it's not elevated so high we need to have a railing. By code, if you guys choose to put a railing up for safety, we will do that. if it becomes an issue, I guess, but yeah, it got a little deeper than what we had before because we had to get the ramp, and we wanted a 5-foot wide ramp, so that pushed that whole thing out a little bit.
Call me crazy, but I think it's a really cool opportunity to put a few Adirondack chairs. And, I mean, it is the front porch for your city. I mean, in a way, there's sort of a symbolicness to it that I think could be really neat. So it's something to think about.
I'm just looking for that big revolving beer can.
You guys keep talking about that. I will say, so this just for scale, this corner is about 18 feet tall. Current building is about 11 and a half to 12. So we're quite a bit taller, because I know that's a concern, making sure you're seen
What's
from
the ceiling
the
height
corners.
in City Hall?
In
Like
council
10
chambers or in the
10
administration?
Well,
How about both?
Both.
both,
We
yeah.
can go back to the ceiling
You like
plan.
10 feet or 9, 10?
So we
11?
got, in your council chambers, the middle part would be 12 feet.
12, okay.
Yep. And then the softing on the side about 10'8". We have to pull it down to get some mechanical, some ductwork through there.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the offices, we have at 10 foot in the open office, 9 foot in the single offices.
And the bathroom's probably 9.
They're like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went lower,
Okay.
9 foot in those, yep. Yeah, but 12 foot in the council chambers. We did 12 foot in this front lobby. 10 foot in this entrance lobby here, so. And I think we had, yep, I think this was included in the pack too, some interior images. So any other questions, comments before I throw it to McGough?
Well, having those walls separated in some ways seems okay to me because now we do have screens, and sometimes if you are in the back of the room, you can't see or hear that well anyway, so it might be better if you're looking at a screen or get your sound back there. And I don't know how often that will happen anyways, but it seems like it might be easier for people. Otherwise they're standing there cramming their neck over everybody. And
What is the distance of that hallway? This lobby?
This one here, how
Yeah.
deep is
The
it?
dimensions of it.
It's
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
width.
I want to say it's 10 feet wide, or 10 feet deep.
So you're probably talking just a couple rows of chairs, and the people are standing or whatever. But
Yeah, 2 rows and standing room.
Well,
Mhm.
if you think about the way we've been using this room for the past few years, that lobby's bigger than the entire space that we have our crowds in,
That's true.
so. We could put 50 people in there if we really wanted to.
Yeah, and what we don't have in here yet is, in the council chambers, we've talked with Patrick, and there'll be more meetings with our AV consultants. It's like getting big, TVs. We're not gonna have them behind you guys up on the front. The intent is this wall is more of a feature wall. You look at screens in front of you, and then there's TVs, on the back here for the people in the crowd to see.
No, as a rule, and I don't know if you've gotten into this yet with the consultant, but if you had a screen on each side facing at an angle to the audience, I think even if you're in the hallway, as long as there's some speakers where you can hear, you can look, it's all glass. You
Yeah.
can look through and see the monitors. Because if there was a monitor out there,
You're right, they're gonna have to
it'd
look
be
up.
Pretty tough. So I don't think you have to add any monitors or anything for the
Okay.
lobby.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, that's great then.
They're
Yeah.
gonna be
Oh,
huge,
okay.
yeah. I do like the idea of the doors, just to make the space a little more versatile. But the council chambers that's in this new building is already awfully big. Like, it's big enough to do everything we would want to do in it. So
So what's
add
the other
another,
door?
30% to it by opening up the lobby space. And for a big meeting, that might come in handy, but it might be even more handy for some kind of event where you're going to have 150 people come to a gathering.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do we foresee using this space for events? I mean, that is always the constant, not like a wedding event, but like a business event, whatever. There's no place in town to really go, other than going out to Portage, and
Yeah.
Livingston Resort is no longer an option. So
It's
people
definitely
did-
not designed for ease of catering or things like that.
Mhm.
But in terms of just the space that it would be, I don't think there's anything like it in town right now.
So, doesn't have to be decided today
Yeah.
with these doors, but just something to think about. And it is, we are only showing them like as bifolds, there's still little columns in between them all, so it's not gonna be the
Yeah.
full wide open thing, so.
And sometimes when you do that, you don't end up getting the end result feeling you wanted because of those columns or dividers
Right.
Yeah.
anyways.
Well, I was gonna ask, with those bifolds, they also have, the rest of the, they're just gonna be, the doors are gonna be
The doors will
sort of
stick out,
sitting
they
there
stick
against
out a
these-
little bit next to the columns, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's, I like these doors better because they're better acoustically than the big, glass partitions that slide. Knowing that they'll only be open 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe times a year. And I think if they're 40,000, they're probably still cheaper than those big Nana sliding walls.
Mhm.
Is there a reason that there has to be 3 instead of 2? Or?
Well, we couldn't, no, it's just the way things lined up, I guess, really. We're kind of, the mullions on the outside of the building, we matched them on the inside of the building, and it's just kind of how things laid out. We didn't want to have a door here, because this is where the door into the room is. So we just kind of picked the middle 3.
And we don't need those for egress at
No.
all.
No, your egress is out the door, the main door here, and then there's a back door there. So. Just a quick go through, just mechanical, electrical, I'll speak what I can about it, but the mechanical system is, the base price is a water source heat pump loop paired with a fluid cooler and an electric boiler to serve heat pumps. We're showing a geothermal well in here, and we'll talk that more with the cost estimate. And then what we've got, what the little hatch pattern then is just the heated floor on the outside for the, instead of putting the fin tube on the wall, we put the heat in the floor. And then what we've also done is done the hydronic slab out front too. Since now we have these stairs and ramps, and with snow and ice, and because we have a water system, we'll just run some of those lines outside to heat the sidewalk and the ramps out in front of doors. And that's on both the stairs and ramps.
And we're big fans of that idea.
Just a ductwork plan. Like I said, if anybody wants to look closely at it, it's just ductwork diffusers. Out of the mechanical room in the corner serves the admin and council chambers, and then there's another mechanical room up in the liquor store. Whoops, what am I doing? Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I just clicked on the wrong thing on my screen. Power and technology and everything. We've had a few meetings with City Hall staff and with Patrick to talk about some of the technology and power and general office setup. Council chambers, we've got floor boxes at each of the council seats, and then also one in the middle. And then liquor store, we've got lots of cameras. You know, like I said, power for signs. That's all for building plan and design, unless there's more questions. I'll turn it to you guys.
Okay.
You want me to just go to the next?
Yeah, can you,
Do you want the mouse to zoom or do whatever?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'll talk to this one. So,
What do you want me to zoom in on?
The bottom.
but you know what? You're right. Let's just go right to that first, and then we'll go back. So this, you see the 7.7 there at the bottom, but we'll go back to the top. We'll just kind of walk through at high level, the three sections. And we've talked a little bit about the add alternates. We'll explain what those are and the values. And then we have a variance report that will tell you what's up and what's down from our April estimate, which was a conceptual estimate at that time. So up at the top, again, this is the update for the DD set. Those 15 items are the various scopes within the project. And if you have questions on detail of what actually is included in each of those numbers, John has that information. So those are the various scopes. If you go down to the miscellaneous costs, we have the permit in there, the survey and layout, the subcontractor default insurance, our general liability insurance, and then the fees and contingency. We still have a design contingency at 5. Our construction contingency is at 3. Those have not changed. The escalation and supply chain management allowance, we did reduce that back in April. That was 250, but we think we've mitigated some of that risk. It's still not a perfect world out there in terms of lead times on stuff, suppliers, subs not holding prices for more than 30 days, delays that affect schedule, those types of things. So we're still carrying 1% in there. And then down to our construction fee, which is 3.5%. So again, we're at 7,753. Back in April for the conceptual, we were at roughly 6.5. So we're up just over $1 million.
Do you want to look at that variance report first?
Yeah, let's,
Okay.
actually, Brandy, let's go to the, there you go. So just so everybody understands, these 3 items, those are add alternates, so they're not in the 7.7. We broke those out so that you understood if you choose any of those, that's the associated cost as that we know of today. So those are not in the 7.7.
Could we add those later on if we, or like
specifically like the green roof. and
Yes.
the Photovoltaics.
The green roof and the photovoltaics are the easy additions.
Yep.
The geothermal wells are not.
Right. So if we wanted to do the geothermal, we would probably want to do it
No.
now.
Yep.
So any questions on the cover sheet with the total of the 7.7 or of the alternates? Okay, let's go to that variance report. So again, this report, line by line, tells you, so in the far left column, you see the estimate dated 4/5, and we're comparing that to today's 8/28, the DD set, and then the difference, whether it's up or down, and then I believe we have some comments on some of the major ones to explain.
We don't.
I don't think there are.
listed.
Okay, okay. Anyhow, Eric, I don't know if you want to take any of this, or if John's
Yeah,
John's got the comments.
John, if you could walk us through maybe some of those higher percentages at this point, and just some reasons behind why, and I'll chime in if you need me to.
Yeah, for sure. And if I'm talking too quiet or nobody can hear me, please speak up. So the first one, a little higher, is going to be our site work. Up about 60% from the last time. One of the big changes with that number is going to be strictly our earthwork number. Previously, we weren't aware of the type of soils on site, and with this iteration of estimating, we were able to get some borings out there to bore and test out the soil. It turned out that there is going to be a lot of soil correction that is going to be required. So exporting and importing new soil. So that's going to be one of the larger reasons why earthwork is up. Some other explanations are with the plans we have added just a tad more kind of site concrete that wasn't there before, like patching up of the public right of way and some of those new ramps that you saw. So that's going to be kind of the big movers in the site work number. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to substructure, also another one that's up quite a bit. One of the reasons behind those is in our previous estimates, we weren't accounting for the real new finished floor elevation of the 608 that Randy was talking about. So with that is all of our foundational, they're gonna creep up a little bit, which adds to the foundation price as well. That's gonna be one of the big reasons in substructure. There's not too much in substructure, it's just basically concrete, and you have some waterproofing in there too. But any questions on the substructure? Moving on, structure is down, so that's nice to see that we have some systems down in this. Exterior enclosure, really, as you can see, it's hardly any change from the previous estimate, so that's what we like to see. Roofing as well it's still up, but it's not drastically up like site work and substructure. Moving on to interiors, another one that's up there. That's going to be with a lot of, how do I say, kind of, some of the, since last time, a lot of the finishes have been kind of pinpointed as to what type of interior finishes you want, from the ACT to the flooring, all that. So that does affect it a little bit. Some of the other reasons, as Brandy did mention, a new roof stair, a roof shift ladder was added to our mist metals in interior, so that's also a little scope creep is there as well with that. One of the larger ones in interior is just going to be our overall drywall pricing too. Obviously, in the last couple years, not so much in the last couple months, but pricing has gone up and labor has gone up too. So that's going to be a lot of the things we see in our drywall number that's going to be pushing that close a little bit. Moving on to mechanical, another one that's up a little bit. And this is going to be up mainly because, again, it's that kind of escalation that we've all seen throughout the years or in the months. But
John?
Brian or Eric, do you have anything else to?
Yeah,
to add on those?
maybe just jumping back to building equipment, you know, probably worth noting that before we did not carry the walk-in cooler on the estimate, and now we've priced that. We've gone out and have pricing back on that, so that's why we've got that value there.
So that's a pretty decent sized number that gets thrown into this
Yep,
mix.
yep.
Okay.
Just a comment on, mechanical, electrical, those, not only do lead times continue to be way out there, but the equipment costs on those continue to go up every day. So that, again, that's kind of that line item on the other sheet about our escalation and supply chain management kind of feeds into that. That's some of the protection for that. But mechanical, electrical, the panels, all that stuff, lead times continue to push out, cost continues to go up. It's really hard to pin that down. And I should say too, we didn't mention this at the beginning, these are budget numbers that are put together from recent relevant historical data, as well as subcontractor input. So we're talking to the mechanicals and electricals and they're giving us numbers. These aren't bids. We'd like to think that when we get to the point of bidding, that arena is going to be much more competitive.
And then everything else, what we call the miscellaneous costs and fees and contingencies, those all adjust with all the pricing above. So those are all calculations that are just spit out. So those increase as the subtotal construction costs also will increase or decrease. But any questions on the data variance report?
There's a 50% increase in the mechanical estimate. And the only explanation that you provided is that the market's changed. Like, did the estimate of what you thought we were gonna build change too?
John, did you hear that?
I did not know.
Mechanical's up 53%, and I had mentioned that part of that would be due to ongoing cost escalation, but what else is making up that 53? Do you know off the top of your head, or can you access it?
That you would have had,
It wasn't in
4
the
months
April
of budget.
budget,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so-
Right.
I mean, it could, I know part of it was just design development on our mechanical system, just more detailed.
Yeah, off the top of my head, and I'd have to look deeper, but the snow melt, I'd have to look if we priced that last time, and also all the in-floor radiant heat. Those are two things that kind of jump out at me right now that I'd have to go back and.
Those weren't on the
look
April
at.
set.
Okay.
Mike, and we'll get a definitive answer on that in
And
more detail.
the only reason I ask is to try and understand, like, how this is gonna change again before next time,
Mhm.
so.
But I
Shouldn't
think-
be any more surprises about what's included at this point.
Right.
yeah, I think at this point, the risk would be, the risk now would be more inflationary, not, we didn't know about, because
Right.
hopefully at this point, we would just, all of these things just carry through, but the elements are all there.
Yep.
But I think that's a good point, like the floor systems and stuff wouldn't have been talked about in schematic.
else on cost estimate?
The site work.
Yep. Dan is, and our civil engineer thinks the numbers have too much excavation in it, too much over excavation, so he's still trying to work through some of those. You know, I think you guys went the conservative route, you had a couple numbers that were closer and went with those, but I know.
Yeah, we're not, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not carrying the lowest of the three right
Right.
now. There's too many unknowns yet. I want to say we're carrying between the lowest and the second area,
Like
but I don't.
a hybrid between the three numbers, just, you know, three reputable earthwork contractors have helped, and, you know, it's, with that, they've all looked at the borings. We didn't have the geotech report at the time that we put this together. Now the geotech report is available, but at the time it was just the borings. And, you know, there is some areas of peat identified in, I believe, 5 of the borings, and just understanding, you know, how deep are those, and are they necessary to be removed. I think the idea right now is that, yes, they have structural work above or around them, so they would need to be removed, but like Brandy was saying, there might be opportunity to say, well, nope, that's out of the footprint, that's over in the parking lot, we don't need to chase down that area of soil correction. So there's probably more that we can develop and work on in that regard.
So I would suspect our engineers are gonna work with you, and we're gonna
Right.
figure out ways to, 'cause if you didn't catch that, by the time we got, you were doing the estimate based on the borings. Our engineers are looking at the full report where they start making recommendations. Somewhere in between is the right answer,
Right.
and we're just not quite there. So the hope would be that number can come down a little, but we would have to work together to find the right answer.
And this difference isn't nearly as drastic as the one that we experienced when the Public Works Garage was originally looking at the business park as a location. But the reason we're not in the business park is because of that number, the site work. That we were on, it was a slope and it had a lot of water to deal with, and it had a lot of bad materials, and down here, it's not a slope, thank goodness.
Right.
And there's not a lot of running water through here, but there is bad
County water
materials.
at about 5 feet probably. What, you're not recommending soil correction through the whole parking lot
No.
behind us, are you? No.
No, and that's what we wanted, that's what we're trying to clarify between
Right.
what the budget pricing that was provided and what the geotech report is now recommending, which they didn't have, you know, at the time, so. That's just,
Yeah.
we're trying to reconcile that number a little bit from what is shown on here, because this was priced on just the borings.
And the original number just didn't assume a lot of soil correction?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So if we were looking at just a neutral site anywhere, the original number might be more appropriate if there wasn't soil corrections. But we're not. We're sitting in an old pond.
That's where you are.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why we didn't spend a lot of time thinking about keeping this building and remodeling it, because you can't fix that problem. Like, our foundations are not adequate, our doors don't open and close in the wintertime, and the floor is too low. So if we're gonna be on this site and fix those problems, that's what it's gonna take.
So somewhere between 5 and 8 will be a number, and it might be 7, but we
Might
don't
be
know
8.
yet.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Anything else with this? Then we'll move to Mike.
So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is, we talked about the add alternates, which are sort of the energy saving component of the building, which while there may be more upfront costs to put those in, you get those savings for the life of the building. So I just want to make sure, now we have an interesting opportunity in front of us with the IRA bill that was passed about a year ago. There's a thing called alternative energy credits, which allows a municipality to actually get a check back. And they call them tax credits, but you're not really paying taxes, so it's kind of weird. So you could think of it as a rebate or something like that. So I put together a worksheet to try to start calculating what that might mean. In particular, this ground source system with your geothermal wells is a really interesting opportunity. And if you, can I use the mouse for a
Yes.
second just so I can? So the way it works is there's a series of percentages of credit that you can get. So the first line here is a they call it the 5 times, so normally your base credit would be 6%. But right now, there's a sale. Now, I don't know why they call it a bonus, but it's really a 30% credit. And that's on all related expenses related to that ground source heat system. So I guess it's heat and cooling. But so what I did in this, it gets a little complicated, but the light blue is the cost of the geothermal well field and all of the piping that brings it to the building. And that's about $358,000. So Grand Marais can get 30% for the bonus if, and this is the bummer, but if you had all domestic materials, you can get an extra 10%. And in theory, that's a possibility. But the problem is the IRS has written more of the rules after the legislation was passed. It's pretty onerous and not likely that the manufacturers are actually going to give up all of this information. So I'm just saying we're not getting that. Good news is Grand Marais is an energy community, so you get an extra 10% there. And that just means that a coal plant or something similar has been closed adjacent or near you. So on a map, you are an energy community. You don't meet well, I'll talk about photovoltaics in a bit. So that gets you to 40%. The reason I was asking Mike before the meeting about, are you doing tax exempt bonds for this project? If you do tax exempt bonds, the government's not going to let you take tax exempt bonds and get this credit. So they're going to give you a penalty of up to 15%, which is why we would take that back to a 34% credit. I did talk to the tax consultant that we use on all of this stuff, and his job is just to keep up with every new, bulletin that comes out. And I said, what if they had another source for just this equipment, but yet did the bonds for everything else? He said, that works. So if you can come up with and he said, but you have to have a separate contract for that. You have to bill it separately. Just keep it separate, account for it separately. And these guys are telling me you can do that. So if you just go to the next slide. So whoops, before you go to the next slide, if you had to take the penalty, the way this worksheet works, so the construction dollars, and here's the cool thing. All of this stuff in green that's equipment that is going to be in this building. If you don't do the well field, you go down here, you're going to have the electric boiler and the fluid cooler that Brandy referred to earlier. That's your mechanical system, which is still a really nice system in terms of energy efficiency, all electric, the whole thing. But what I was trying to calculate here, now the green stuff is going to work for both systems. So your add is the blue, and that add is so you're paying a $300,000 premium to get the geothermal field. But the benefit on the tax credit is as long as the energy being utilized by all of these other things is a direct connection to your geothermal well field, you get all of that credit downstream. So in other words, you can get 34 or 40% off your ductwork, the insulation wrapped around your ductwork, your grills, your registers, all of this stuff that you're going to need in your building anyway also can get credited back to you. So now all of a sudden, adding that 300,000 for the well field gets you can get that whole thing for basically $62,000 rather than the 300. Does that make sense? So your credit in this scenario is 238,000 roughly
That's at the 34%.
at 34%. So also, they're telling me that you can actually allocate the design fees that go into this and throw that into the pot. So we just took the same percentage that we are doing the whole project, allocated it to that amount. So if you go to the next slide, if we can separate out and not use tax exempt bonds, now your credit is almost 280,000, so the cost of that well field is now about $20,000. I mean, you're gonna pay for that very quickly, right, with your energy savings. So I think it's a good deal for you. Here's the downside, if there's a downside, is no one's gotten a check yet. We don't know what that part looks like exactly. We think it comes like the next tax season after you spend the money. So you're gonna end up spending the money, and then probably the next year, you're gonna get a check back. The next slide is the photovoltaics. And this one doesn't get quite as fancy because there's no downstream credit or any of that kind of stuff.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry.
I was just gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see it.
Okay.
both.
So in this one, I'm just showing that the whole panel system, if it's 176,000, and the thing I have to verify, I'm not 100% confident that our design fees can be credited for this, but I'll check. But it's still a pretty decent credit, about 62,000, 63,000. So your net cost is really closer to, well, if you assume the same strategy of not using the tax exempt bonds, you can get about a $74,000 credit. So it brings it down to about a $100,000 cost for your photovoltaics. It's a little more complicated here in Grand Marais because Mike keeps reminding me we're the electric utility, so the cost benefit isn't like other places. So I think there's a little bit more, return on investment review that would need to be done to see if that's still worth doing. Versus, in our conversation tonight and talking about your stormwater needs, maybe there's a higher value to making it a green roof. The problem, the bummer is the green roof doesn't get this kind of deal. So it's gonna be straight up paying for a green roof, so. Any questions on all of that?
I'm reading about geothermal for other reasons recently, and looking at the state site, they said they were still waiting, kind of what you have said, for how the federal government intended to administer theirs, and then there would be state opportunity.
So I think there is gonna be more coming from the state, and there's some of us are thinking that what they're gonna do is they're gonna realize the situation with like the domestic content, and they're gonna put money on the table if you just buy it in Minnesota or buy it, so there's still, I don't know what that looks like, if there are enough manufacturers or parts or pieces that we could get from Minnesota, but I think it's something we would have to at least entertain if it really, because then that ramps up, not only does that ramp up the credit on that piece of equipment, but you get that whole downstream benefit again, so it's kind of a nice benefit. So I think we would look for the state to bump this up somehow.
If the timing wasn't tricky about this, it seems like it's just an obvious thing for us to do. But the timing makes it risky.
Risky in the fact that
We're gonna be done designing and this is what we're gonna build, and then we don't really know how these programs are gonna work yet. So we have to be willing to not get this money.
Yeah, I mean, we had a situation where we had a massive project that we did for a client down in the Twin Cities, and the project finished in about March of this year. We were able to go, they had no concept that this even existed, and they might get millions of dollars in a check back after the fact because they happened to, had they finished it before January 1st, no chance, but you're in that situation where you have to go on faith, right, that there will be a check coming.
But this I mean, this checks a lot of boxes for us in terms of what we're trying to do with the building long-term, making it more efficient, making it cheaper to operate, but also what we're trying to do with our climate action plan, and at a pretty low price. I mean, you could justify it without our climate action plan, I think, and yet we have one that says we should be looking at stuff like this.
So is this vertical then?
I'm sorry?
Is this
Yes.
geothermal
Yeah,
vertical?
drilled bores, drilled wells.
How does that work underneath our pond here?
Just goes through it. They just drill down.
Yeah, how deep are they?
It depends. They're usually 100 feet.
So most of that will
More.
be through rock,
Yeah.
which is why it costs that. But that's, I mean, that's all the wells in Cook County, right? So. Yeah, the photovoltaic's different. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what to make of that.
So what's the temperature of that water? What's the temperature of the water?
Should be 45 degrees.
What
Yeah.
is it?
It's usually like I want to say around 50.
50 degrees?
Anything else you want to look at on here?
Don't think so.
And then all I had left was next steps. We're kind of looking for a bit of direction on this geothermal well system or not, because it does affect the design. I'm going to be looking to schedule a finishes meeting in 2 to 3 weeks to talk about exterior materials, like kind of picking the final stuff, and the same with the interior. So I have to get that on the schedule, bring our interior designer up. And then, yeah, if everybody's good with where we're at, we're gonna keep plowing ahead. We're right now planning on being done with construction drawings, kind of ends late October, which will give McGough enough time to start getting bid packages together and.
Yeah, long lead for sure.
Yep. And, all with plans of, I want to say April, but it's May 15th up here, isn't it? May 15th start. I mean, demo could start earlier,
Only if we've got.
only if you've left.
So none of these costs include moving somewhere else?
No.
No. No.
No, when we think about the budget for this project, that piece is not developed yet, but we need to. And the office space for City Hall is not going to be very difficult to solve. We can exist in some of our existing buildings and remotely, I think, for 8 to 10 months without a lot of disruption. Liquor store is a different story. It's going to cost money to set something up, and it's not going to operate as well. And so there's going to be some lost revenues we want to build in too. And like I said, in the budget side of this, we'll want to think about that in our operating budget next year, but we also probably want to think about that in the construction budget too, that we actually might borrow some lost revenue, just, capitalize some of those costs. Which means that 7.7 number isn't there yet. It's probably north of 8.
I don't have any comments on the design or the money. I just don't know where it's gonna come from. I think we just have to work on that. And, I wanna see what does that debt service look like, and, or at least preliminarily, I wanna see what those impacts are gonna be to taxpayers for sure, right? How much cash are we putting down, how much are we financing?
Yeah. And
Right, like we
we've
have to
we've
have
got a
that.
draft of that.
Yeah, like.
But it's time now to turn that into a real document. And I think some of the conversations, Mike, that you brought up about how are we gonna pay for this and what's tax exempt and what's not, we can nail that down now. And we've had some conversations with Ellers about this, but it's probably time for them to put an actual document together that you could look at and say, this is, if you're borrowing this much, this is what it's gonna cost to pay it back, and here's the sources we're gonna use.
Have you seen any grant opportunities for City Hall buildings?
City halls are not one that you see a lot of straight up grants for, but we're keeping our eyes open for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure we can talk to IRRB about some sort of infrastructure grant for this project. You kind of see the scale that they've worked with us on other projects, and I would imagine that they'd be open to that conversation too. So maybe some of that helps us cover the temporary costs of being other places.
I have seen some rare situations where there's actually bonding money that has gone for some city halls, but typically those are extraordinary circumstances where, their city hall burned down, it's a super small community, they just don't have resources at all. And I just don't know that they're gonna look at you in that light here. Maybe there's something. The extraordinary part, I think, really is, how do you keep a viable liquor store operation, which is really important to your economy, your tax base here. Maybe there's something there.
But the cost
Could
of looking
easily
at that
be a zero
opportunity.
sum though, right? By the time you do all of those and factor in inefficiency and the move and everything else, I mean, it could be zero sum.
It would also be 2 more years if we're gonna go through a process to try and get bonding money.
Yeah, I don't
It's
even
not gonna
know.
happen next summer.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if bonding money would be the solution there, but,
Yeah.
is there some other through deed or something?
I think we've probably missed typical state grant opportunities for next year. We just weren't. They operate on a longer timeline, so to take a project like this and develop it and then build it right away, we'd have to be willing to shop around for a while and see what we could find. And like you said, costs are escalating. No one's gonna show up and pay for a third of this, so there's no guarantee that grants would actually improve the situation.
Right.
Of course, the county's going to the state with their capital improvement plan to ask for bonding money.
Careful.
We'll put it on the agenda.
It's part of that because of the law enforcement issues too. The nature of why they're asking for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that, they've got a compelling story to tell about the things that they're trying to do. But it's pretty comprehensive.
I don't have any other questions. Do you guys have other things rolling around right now? Or you want to absorb things and talk about it later?
I'd
As
like
long
to
as it
absorb
chance
them.
to-
Yeah, it's a lot.
You know.
Yeah, we know.
All these documents we can make available for folks.
Yes, please.
We've also got the design development documents, right? If you want to see all the plans, we saw a selection of them here, but we have them all. And there it is. It looks a lot like that. Yeah.
I can
And
leave
if
that here if
anybody
you want it.
really wants a good read, we've also got the
The spec book.
350-page spec book. That's on this size paper at
Yes,
least.
but it's this thick.
And it's just getting started.
It's gonna there'll be 2 of those by the time we're done with this.
I'll wait then.
Want to ruin the ending?
No.
It looks good on paper,
Okay.
the building is beautiful.
Well, it's, another one of those once-in-a-lifetime investments being made for our community. And the last time we made one is where we're all sitting right now. And we've shaped it and changed it for many years, and here we are again. And it doesn't make anybody feel better, but you can go look at all the other projects being done around the state and see the enormous amounts of money being spent for a variety of other, rec centers and all sorts of things. And this isn't as much money as what I've seen other spending for certain things. I kind of think we've been somewhat conservative, but with quality. Things cost money.
I hope you caught what Lenny said when you were looking at the property maintenance budget earlier tonight. He wishes we would have done this project first, means rather than the Public Works facility where he actually operates out of. He would have rather we did this building first because of the condition issues that we have to deal with. So, I'm glad we did theirs first.
I am
If they really needed it.
Porta potties for employees
Yeah.
was really not acceptable.
No.
Yeah, it's been 50 years since this building's really had significant work done to it. That's the last additions that were really put on it. The visitor center was a little more recent than that, but it's not really being used right now. Otherwise, it's been a long time.
When was the fire hall built? When they moved the trucks out of here?
In the
19
80s.
80s?
Isn't it 1996 up here? In that,
I thought it was,
for the new fire hall.
I think it was earlier than that, 88 or something.
When I joined, we were here. Not too long ago. So, 30 years already?
No law enforcement moved in 97.
Yeah.
It's like, where does time go?
It's been here my whole life.
And this used to be the fun room.
Yeah, I sat in this lounge and had a drink when I was 21, or was I 18?
Might have
You
been
could have been
18.
18
I was
for a
18
while.
Back then I went to 21 and, yeah, the lounge to whatever, selling fish burgers during Fisherman's Picnic.
Well, thanks everybody for
Yeah.
taking us through that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you want me to leave this? You didn't want a hard copy?
I think we did print one out.
Did you?
I wouldn't mind too.
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
Full set, I just pulled random sheets out of it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for coming up here.
Yeah. Where are we at?
Continuing budget discussion, or?
If there's any need to follow up on the budget discussion, we put it on the agenda just because we wanted it there. Plus, it was a nice spot for those documents to land so that the public had access to them right
Mhm.
away.
Mhm.
But I don't have anything more I need to say about it.
Okay.
All right.
The only thing I would add, on this memo, from the capital projects, we haven't talked much about public works or the water stuff, right? And I just didn't know if that was still hanging out there, that $9 million,
Yeah,
right? Like, where are we at on that? What is that happening, not happening?
I think just put it in the timing of this conversation. It's unlikely to be related to the property tax directly, the wastewater treatment plant. So we won't be levying property tax dollars necessarily to pay any of that debt. I mean, it's obviously related because we've got one group of people to collect all the money we need for all the projects that we do. But for now, that debt would be covered by ratepayers would be the plan. And I don't think we'll be moving forward on that project until we get significant assistance. And we don't have it right now. So that isn't in the cards for next year. We know that, so we'll have to move forward with something quite a bit smaller just to deal with some of the changes that we talked about to help with odors next year. But it's not something,
Yeah.
when we're looking at this, long-term projection of where our levy's going, it's not really directly related to that. But the other projects that I alluded to earlier, the First Street reconstruction includes a lot of street work that would be affecting the property tax levy. I'm working with LHB right now to put together a project where we'll start scoping that out. So literally the first step will be, let's decide what's in and out of this project. And then the next step will be, let's have some conversations with the community and with you about what we think we're gonna do and when we think it's gonna happen and what we think it might cost and how we intend to pay for it.
Mhm.
But it's still a few years out before we would do it. I mean, probably next year we might work on some design work for it. So we could be next year in the same boat that we're on this one, and it's possible that in 2025 we could turn around and do a major project, but I don't think we're gonna decide to, just because that's not when our debt payments stop on the other projects.
Sure.
So it'll probably be a little bit longer.
Okay.
We'll spend some more time this year looking at that, like I said, when LHB gives us the proposal to scope it out. But it also won't directly be linked to this budget conversation about what's the levy gonna be next year.
Fair enough.
So we'll have to ask again for federal funding, which we didn't get this time, this ask around.
And we're asking for state funding, which is just getting ramped up, so that application process isn't complete yet.
So council and staff reports, do you have other reports, Mike, you wanted to make? Well, since you're on the roll here.
I do not.
Okay. Craig, do you have any?
No, I don't have anything to report, other than I have an observation I'd like to report on, and that is the observation of this summer not smelling any sewer. So something got changed over there, which is a plus.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it from a couple other people that have approached me, did you guys spend that money on that odor thing over there? I said, no, we haven't. So, well, what's going on? I said, well, we got something figured out and it's working, and knock on wood, it keeps on working and no one's complained. We haven't had any complaints from anybody, so I think it's been a good thing.
And I can say, hats off to Neil and our wastewater staff for making that happen. I can also say, we think we know why it happened, and we're not counting on it working every time forever.
Right.
And so we're gonna keep moving
Right,
ahead on that
yeah,
other
but at least
stuff.
we've had a comfortable summer.
Yeah.
Buy some time.
Unlike previous summers.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean,
Yeah.
it's great, and it's not just the odor that was
Of course.
affected, it really also affected the amount of biosolids that we had to haul this year. It was also reduced quite a bit.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's kind of both of those things are good things.
That's all I've
Yeah.
got.
I don't have any updates.
Well, initially, and I don't know how much bandwidth you guys all have, and I don't know how much I have, but we wanted to talk a little bit about North House,
Yeah.
but we don't have a lot to talk about. I
We
don't
met with them
think-
twice.
Yeah.
We're trying to come up with a brief statement that we can share with the public about what those meetings, just those small group meetings, are trying to accomplish.
What are we doing?
Yeah. And that's where we're at, is going back and forth on that right now.
Trying to
We're hoping
agree
to be
on
ready
what
tonight.
what we're doing.
Yeah. But we know what we want to do, and what I think is happening there, which is, we're talking about our relationship and what we want, how we want it to operate, and as a way to understand what they want and need from us, but also that they can understand what we want from them. And, what we've said is that the figuring out the lease is important to us.
I was gonna say, this is driving to a new lease, right? I mean, what you're trying to,
I think,
Or
you know, Ben was very clear about that the last time we met and after it. And so I think that message is loud and clear right now,
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot of affirmation about that, but that was, what we made it clear was, look, we love having the conversation and we want to work on relationship, but we have a job to do as well that you guys have sent us to do, and so we want to make sure that we still have a pathway to having that conversation, and so, yeah, we still have a little bit of work to do on that.
well, are we getting closer to like having a work session on this? Or
I think by next city council meeting, we're gonna, I think we'll have maybe more to share about, I would hope.
Yeah, what is that pathway?
About what
to
is
get
that
where we wanna
pathway,
get?
because
Yeah.
we're trying to dial in on that, yeah, I mean, I think they're calling it a vision statement, and we're just like, well, let's,
Mhm.
I might have used that term first. I feel a little bad about that, because it's
It
not
was
what I
really
want it to be.
And then we got a wonderful one. It was, yeah. But yeah, so I think we'll have a lot. I think we definitely want to share more about that and talk. And the goal would, yes, it'd be wonderful to get everybody's input into that. But I don't know if we're actually, both entities are in a position where we're even talking openly about the lease at all.
Oh, that'll be good to have a good update though.
Yeah.
Kind of let us know where,
Yeah.
you know,
'Cause I wanna
what
be
you are
open
talking about.
that with you guys, and
Mhm.
you know.
I think they want to give you an update too on their future plans. And they've been doing some strategic planning that maybe some of you have had a chance to interact with, and some of you haven't.
Mhm.
But they want to talk to the city council about that and ask for some input about that, which I think is a welcome direction. And to me, I think that responds to some of the things that you were asking for initially in this conversation, about just having a comfort level of what their future plans are, where are they going with this, and so regardless of the results of our conversation about the lease, that's in the cards as well, that sometime before the end of this year, they are thinking about coming and talking to you about their future plans a little more openly than they have.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike.
Anything else?
Yep. Nada. No.
Almost looked over and said, no, Michael?
I do have one thing.
Okay.
The library would like to hire Ryan Lang as a full-time librarian one. And that would need your approval.
Okay. So we should do that then this evening.
That sounds like a great idea.
Would anyone like to make a motion to hire Ryan Lang as a
Librarian one.
librarian one?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Kim.
Let's see, a few things. When invited to the Chamber Exchange this morning, the topic was cannabis. So we were over at the Art Colony's new building across the street. So we kind of reviewed briefly our new ordinance, and the county talked a little bit, theirs is still in draft, and just general questions about what they're allowed and not allowed to do, and you know, whatever people wanted to talk about, and what we know and don't know, and whatever else. So that was good. Shane and I are working on, with a heavy emphasis on Shane, working on a Minnesota grant, which is not new. It's called the Re-Leaf, as in leaves on a tree grant, for the tree planting concept I was talking about earlier, like removal for trees that may be coming down, diseased, whatever. And then this grant program requires no match, and it pays for, and it wants a lot of professionals involved, tree inventories, tree management plan, and then removal and planting of trees. And there's certain requirements, but it could be super helpful for low-income or elderly people if they needed something like that in their properties and they didn't have the whatever to do it. I still think of last winter and all the trees that went. And then it can also be helpful with our public trees and things as well. So we're working on that. Very tight timeline on that. Did any of you watch the 24th, was that Wednesday or Tuesday nights, or days, County Commissioners Special Session, and we talked about it at our last meeting?
Yes,
Where they talked to.
Thursdays.
I watched it.
Yeah, so did I, okay, I don't. So I think our next steps there is to get some more numbers and basic details, but then sit down and work through with the county, maybe James, Yorkie, and get some meetings together where we can sit down and talk these through. And if you didn't watch that session, the main things they focused on was our snow plowing and street maintenance, the sheriff, and then the Y. And Pat explained his concerns, just he's short-staffed, and then how can we all work together to help him get through that. And I talked to him just a little bit today about it as well, and I think that one is pretty darn doable, and I think we're pretty understanding of the staffing shortages that they have. EDA, we had a special meeting for the budget for next year. They'd like bigger money for some business development, and then they would like to add in some administrative staff. They have hired Teresa Bida. She starts September 5th as the new EDA director, and she does have housing. So we won't watch her go, can't make it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice. Minnesota Historical SHPO, Minnesota Historical
State Historic Preservation.
Preservation, there we go. Oh my gosh. David Mather came and gave us a presentation. This is something they have wanted to do here within their group for a long time within our harbor. And so we asked them to come. They'd been working before with the Historical Society, so they came back and just gave us a presentation to see if we thought it was a very good idea and what the benefits could be. So then we regrouped again last week, and the consensus was, yes, there's a lot of benefit to this. They are interested in doing the research, including a site survey around the properties as well. But he is going to come back sometime in October. He's going to check his calendars and present to all of us in City Council to see what everyone else thinks of.
Okay.
And, we'll talk about the reasons why we would do it and how it could help us with all of our other projects we want to accomplish, including the Coast Guard Station, the East Harbor Road, just whatever. But then everyone gets to see. We wanted to see viability at all before we had him come in front of everybody. And I did talk to Pat also today. He definitely, with all that money he's got for boats and staff, is still very much interested in that boat garage down there in the Coast Guard Station. So that's another plug if we want to keep working with that. Patrick and I, with a little mistake, we didn't get Todd Ford in the room, but we will shortly. We're still working on that communications plan so we can put out with the county a monthly, bi-monthly communication to all of our legislators and the IRRR, just to let them know about different things going on in our community and awareness, kind of help build our relationships with all of those groups a little bit better. North Shore Management Board, we saw a really neat technology demo from the Bayfield group as to how they set up their setbacks and use technology considering the lake's erosion. We also talked about the Lake County finally put in their short stay program, and each township had a little bit of variance to how they wanted to do theirs. Two harbors, their smaller township, Silver Bay, and they put in some caps, and in some of those communities they were very small caps, and they reached them like instantly. Silver Bay put in a 5-acre minimum in theirs. The city, so that was interesting to see how they're all approaching that, and I would say they're more conservative than we are here. And if anyone doesn't know, Andrew Beavers has been hired to handle the short stay management for the county. Yeah, I guess that's it for right now. So anything else? We're all set? All right, guess we are done for the evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.